This time, I would like to turn today's program over to Darren Cunningham. You may begin.
Hello to today's webinar. It's great to be here today with some real experts who will be sharing some best practices and a live demonstration of Informatica Cloud in action. I have Kurt Hudge here with me from Dolby Systems and John Zacharakis from Actelion Pharmaceuticals, as well as Alan Schwab, who is a longtime guru on the Informatica Cloud team, who's going to be diving into a demonstration. So let's get into today's agenda. We're going to spend a few minutes just talking about the need for better business intelligence and compliance, because that's really the use case we see time and time again when it comes to cloud data replication, and specifically in today's topic, replicating data from Salesforce for the purpose of analytics or some sort of compliance and regulation requirement. So Jim will be talking about, Kurt's going to be talking about how they've approached it at Dolby, and then John will be taking us through how they've solved the challenge over at Actelion. And then, as I said, Alan will be really diving in and spending quite a bit of time walking through the solution. So, find people who are attending today live on the WebEx that you got panels. We do want to make this interactive, so please do let us know if you have some questions, and we'll keep it going, and I'm sure we get to those questions as we go through. So, talk a little bit about analytics. I thought this was worth sharing. Like you, I'm sure on the call, you look forward to Gartner's CIO priorities every year. Actually summarize both business and technology priorities. And in 2012, it was nice to see analytics and business intelligence back on top. A number of years it was there, and then we saw cloud and some of the new real megatrends come in and become, the top initiatives for corporate T organizations. And analytics and BI really again serving as really critical enabler of business performance. So I wanted to share with you how Gartner's looking at analytics and BI as an ongoing top priority for IT as well as the business. When you start to talk about business intelligence, many of you on the call are longtime practitioners, data warehousing experts, so this is very straightforward and well understood. We tend at Informatica to break it into different areas. There's the need for fast access to information, so you hear the need for both real-time and batch kinds of data integration. The need for ad hoc reporting, so slicing and dicing, really getting answers on the fly to the questions you have, the spontaneous questions that you need answered. And I think a big one that we see from Salesforce customers in particular is the need for historical data and trending. So being able to go back and looking at trends over time, and that's one of the main use cases we see for people bringing data out of Salesforce and other cloud applications into a centralized data warehousing type of infrastructure. And then of course, given we're Informatica, one of the things we do well is ensuring that you can connect to all the different data sources. Not just being able to analyze data in one system, it's being able to look at a single version of the truth, really trusted data across all of your business applications, databases, and other sources. The pillars of data warehousing, and I bring that up because I wanted to really highlight some of what we hear constantly from customers, really, some of the challenges that they have and the needs they have for very specific cross data source analytics. So something we hear about, and this points to, it really highlights what I illustrated on the previous slide, is the need to connect to multiple data sources, the need for ad hoc reporting and analysis, as well as then the historical trending and analysis, and then being able to access data in real time. So I just want to set the stage for why we're seeing a need generally for broader business intelligence and analytics on Salesforce data, but also on other business application data. The other real driver talk about is compliance, but before that, I just wanted to kind of highlight a typical architecture that we see, and I think John and Kurt will talk about how this is similar or different to their organization. But really, you see organizations pulling data from different systems, bring to really a stage environment or a reference data environment. They then use data marts or a centralized data warehousing approach. They might spin out cubes, but ultimately you're often putting a intelligence solution on top of this. It might be an on-premise system. We're seeing more and more adoption of cloud-based analytics solutions. Some of our partners in this area, like MicroStrategy, have solutions for both cloud and on-premise analytics. But this is a typical business intelligence reference architecture. What we've seen is really an inefficient data replication process can really slow the whole thing down. And that's why what you're going to see in today's demonstration and hear from Actelion and Dolby, how important this replication process, cloud-based, how that's helped them with their both Salesforce adoption as well as analytic initiatives. The other one that we mentioned is compliance. There might be internal business compliance reasons. We have a lot of organizations that have a need to back up cloud-based data, to copy on-premise. We have a lot of organizations that run nightly jobs to bring down the data and have it available to them for various compliance purposes. But then there's also a number of regulatory reasons why organizations need to replicate their cloud-based data. So these are sources and a few of the potential penalties of actually not complying. So that is the setup and the background of kind of use cases of business intelligence and compliance as real drivers for cloud-based data integration. I wanted to really hand the floor over to you, Kurt, first, and then to John to share your story of how you're approaching this at Dolby and then at Actelion. So with that, Kurt, why don't you take us through your approach over at Dolby?
All right. Give you guys just a brief background on Dolby in case people aren't familiar with Dolby. Dolby, you probably don't buy a lot of our products, but our technologies go into products that Sony, Panasonic, Pioneer, a bunch of other consumer electronic manufacturers make. And I oversee enterprise applications at Dolby. Essentially, we've been using Informatica Cloud Replication for about 5 years. And maybe we can skip to the next slide, and I'll tell you a little about a recent business case we had that Cloud Replication helped us solve. Essentially, we've installed a lot of customer and contact data in Salesforce, and one of our subsidiaries, named Via Licensing, had a need to get some of this contact data into another system that was called Giordano. We use Giordano to essentially manage email reflection. So one licensee or one contact can send an email to a distribution list, and that is reflected back out to a bunch of other licensees and contacts at other companies. And so this sort of forum email where they can email each other and see responses from each other without actually having to know all the email addresses for all the members of the community. Big focus for us. So this was a problem because Giordano needed data from Salesforce.com, but it couldn't really receive web service messages from Salesforce.com. It couldn't easily get that data. It needed a local data to be able to point at. And obviously Salesforce is in the cloud, so some solution to get that Salesforce data on premise. And if we jump to the next slide, we can talk about how we saw it. So we used Informatica's Cloud Replication to essentially just point at the few objects and records in Salesforce that we needed for Giordano, and we basically turned on a replication job to just copy data and replicate it down to a local on-premise database where Giordano could easily point at it. And it was really easy to do. Essentially, we thought about building a custom integration or no other way to get this on-premise, but actually got someone in-house that didn't even know Informatica Cloud Replication and set it up. Someone else in our organization that knew how to do it just kind of showed them in a few minutes. They basically pointed to the Salesforce instance and tables and objects they wanted and just set the job to copy the data down. It was very simple. And it essentially runs every, I think, 5 minutes or so. So it's near real time, certainly near real time enough for this business need, and able to get all the data it needed in a very low cost, very low support effort and cost scenario, I guess. So we've been using, outside of that business case, Informatica Cloud Replication from Salesforce for about 5 years for other reasons as well. We have other systems like Giordano. Some were homegrown systems, some are other third-party applications that all kind of work well if Salesforce data is replicated locally. So we had various business cases, maybe 5 or 10 different ones that all needed some piece of near real-time Salesforce data, and it was just easier to point them to a local replicated database. Salesforce also has some limitations with reporting. if you read like a 9-table join and some really easy queries, it's hard, if not completely limited in Salesforce, what you can do. But if we have this local replicated database, we can do as much complex analytics as we want. And so we actually have a couple specific use cases where we post information to our licensees online, and all the analytics for that come from this replicated database that we couldn't do within Salesforce.com. Last thing is we're moving towards a more holistic B strategy. So we have data coming from our SAP environment into our data warehouse, but we don't yet have Salesforce data coming in. And the Informatica Cloud replication, copying all that Salesforce data to a local database where our BI systems can basically leverage it. That's going to be a key use case for us in the next year as we build out our organizational and global dashboards and reporting for our executives. Those are the main use of it for Dolby, and we've had it, like I said, for about 5 years, and it seems like every 3 to 6 months we come up with a new case for how to leverage the replicated data.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, a couple quick questions for you, Kurt. One question came in on volumes, data volumes. Can you talk to your experience there? I mean, do you run nightly batch runs of the replication service? Do you have it? You say you have it set it, forget it, so it's pretty much running scheduled throughout the day. What's your experience been on the volume side?
Yes, there's two. I should talk. We have actually 2 Salesforce instances, one for our subsidiary via licensing and one for Dolby. The Dolby data, the whole database, just about every key record that we use is replicated, I think it's a couple times a day. In the volume there, I mean, we probably have order of thousands, maybe even in the tens of thousands of a Salesforce, and maybe 20 or 30,000 contacts, where you don't have millions and millions of customers and contacts in Salesforce.com. We do have some records are in the hundreds of thousands for sure, but I'm not sure it's multi-millions. And that's a couple times a day. Never really had a problem with the jobs completing on time. The instance that I said runs every 5 minutes, the volume is fairly low. It's basically looking for any changes in essentially these patent pools, members from our external licensees that belong to these different groups, so that we know if a new contact gets added and if they join a different group, they can collaborate together. And those updates, maybe only a couple of updates per day, and maybe we have, a number of 1,000 or so contacts in that organization. So the data volumes are fairly low in that use case I mentioned where we replicate to the local database for that Gordon email reflection. If it was much higher, obviously I don't think we could get away with a 5-minute threshold if we had millions of records and we were looking across lots and lots of data. I don't know, we haven't tried that, so that's a summary of the volume. I'm not sure that answered the question.
No, that's great. Another question I have is around your history with Informatica. I know you guys are also using our Power Center on-premise product for a lot of different use cases. Did you consider using Power Center for the replication use case and just decide that this was a better approach? What drove you to the cloud-based approach to the replication?
Yeah, we looked. Essentially, we do use Power Center a lot. We have a lot of integrations from Salesforce as well as many other applications. We have SAP talking to Salesforce, talking to custom homegrown systems, all using Informatica Power Center. And we've built workflows. You can do some really crazy advanced stuff using the Informatica Power Center workflows. But if you're just to get data from point A to point B and not do a whole lot of look on other systems or crazy complex things, and all you really want to do is replicate it, the based approach for the data replication was an easy choice for us, because you basically within, say, an hour, but it might even have been 5 minutes, we essentially wired up the job to say, here are the tables I want, records in Salesforce I want to copy, here's the local database I want to copy them to, and then schedule and go. There was really no work required, and if the model in Salesforce changes where we add a new field to that Salesforce, the replication job will pick that up, and it'll even replicate that across if we wanted to. And so it was just kind of no maintenance approach. It was also very easy to set up initially, which is attractive, but it's kind of zero maintenance strategy. Whereas the workflows, we probably would have had to manually add whatever new fields we added into that workflow to make sure it got replicated, and it was a little bit more effort and energy than just using the replication job.
Okay, great. And then we'll dive into some of those capabilities, especially on the change detection side when we jump into a demo. So let's come back to you for some questions as we go through, Kurt. But let's hand it over to John, and maybe you can tell us, how you've approached this, anything that's similar or different in your use case over at Actelion.
My name is John Zacharakis. I work for Actelion Pharmaceuticals. I'll go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Actelion is a pharmaceutical company based in Switzerland. It has presence in about 30 countries right now, and their focus is just for diseases that have no current effective treatment. So diseases that would be otherwise terminal, especially in the cardiopulmonary space, with an emphasis on pulmonary arterial hypertension. That's a disease that kills people every year, and up until Actelion's drugs, it was just a degeneration until they could not get out of bed and eventually die of weakness. Actelion came up with this drug about 10 years ago. They have been on a very fast path of growth. Because of it, it actually extends life and the quality of life for these patients. So far, indefinitely. We have patients that have been on drugs since the beginning, and they had a life expectancy of 6 months, and they're still on, and now they're grown up, married, and getting old. So it's what Actelion does. Now, with high medical need and the fast path to grow for a company like Actelion is increased regulatory pressure, because when you get a drug that gets fast-tracked, that gets a lot of recognition, a lot of usage right away, you have to keep track very closely of adverse events, of mortality, morbidity, anything that might rock the boat, that might indicate that there's something that in the eagerness to address medical need not in time to find it beforehand. So good, everything is great with this drug, but it has created a lot of complex business needs on managing our data. So we don't have value, just like a lot of volume, just like Kurt was just saying. Our number of physicians that prescribe the drug in the States are in the 140,000 range. Anywhere from 10 to 20,000 patients on drug at the time. So the volumes are low. But complexity that goes along with how the drug gets prescribed and distributed, and the patients are monitored, and all of the programs that go along with patient care and so on are really deep and really complex. So we needed a system that will keep up with the business and be prepared for the businesses grow as new drugs and new conditions and new franchises come online. We have an older solution for Salesforce automation that was replaced last year. And, we now went to the Salesforce.com platform. I think I have some information on the next slide on that. And specifically, we use Viva. Viva is a Salesforce.com application that is a very nice fit for the health sciences industry, and we decided to go with that specific implementation of Salesforce. We have Salesforce in the field, pharmaceutical reps that go and visit doctors on this. We have certain aspects of patient case management on it. We have a lot of our metrics, a lot of our commercial analytics, and some of our compliance analytics into the Viva platform. The first thing we need to do is integrate the Viva platform to our existing data warehouses and the data hub. Those are really big and complex systems that have 20 enterprise applications integrated with them, a lot of output downstream reporting, a lot of regulatory compliance related things, a lot of commercial analytics, decision making. So it was crucial that the replacement of the Salesforce automation application would fit in very prettily into that space, so we wouldn't disturb everything around it and downstream of it. So creating our data integration options, we looked at Informatica, looked at Informatica Cloud. We found exactly the thing that we're talking about today, the application that keeps up with the changes in the schema, the changes in the business rules, with the change in what attributes in what business object are on or off replicated, what are not replicated. It was simply a matter of turning it on. So, with environment, we had a data integrator working on a project. How I wanted to take a look at this thing myself, just to get a feel for it. The first thing we did is we set up a relation feed for the object. I know right away that the full hierarchical structure of the account object and all of the things that have one-to-one relationships off of the main record were already available for me to select, and with a click, pick up and bring down to replication. I don't hesitate to say that it took exactly 5 minutes to start. And it was replication. It was done count with us right away within the first day we installed the software. So we knew we were on the right path for that. From then on, we completed the implementation. We tied it into our operational data stores, our data house, our master data, placed the old system with it as a data source for all of our analytical and compliance reporting, and we had our first success. The follow-up steps from there were to expand our implementation and do all of our data integration through Informatica. We have our center and the cloud solution. For some things, we will continue using the cloud solution. For some other things that are really complex and really heavy duty, and we want to have very close and near control of, we'll probably keep them on Power Center. So we will end up with a hybrid environment. Implementation goes forward. That led us to Informatica, as opposed to the other wonderful products in the market, is the big one, actually. I'll just focus on that. Is there's a CEO level agreement. There's a CEO level understanding between the two companies. The products, Salesforce and Informatica, will continue fully compatible, and all changes and all new features will be supported mutually. And that's a guarantee for us. We already seen it pay off as we went through our first 14 months in production with it. And I think we're already being fully justified for selling Informatica Cloud.
Great. Thanks for the overview. That's really good information. There was a question that's come in, and I wonder if you can take it, John, and then maybe Kurt, add if there's anything else to add. Specifically, you both talked about the setup time being a real benefit. The question was really about, are there other ways that you've measured the overall effort and cost savings of Informatica Cloud for replication?
Yeah.
In terms of hardware costs, it might be some other metric or dimension you're looking at.
Certainly. We also have measured it in people time to administer and maintain the data feeds. On our system, we had 19 distinct connections between our data warehouse, landing area, our staging area, and the application, the Salesforce automation application itself. And those 19 took about a third of a person every week, just managing, checking, and connecting, and rerunning, and doing all of those things. All of that disappeared. We have not had failures. If there's a network connectivity outage, that's one thing. It'll pick it up in the next 5 minutes when it goes to synchronize again. So essentially, we don't have the overhead of a person feeding and caring for this thing. So that's our biggest payoff. Similar
or different there, Kurt?
Yeah, it's the same story here. I mean, I don't think I have a detailed ROI to sort of show, dollars per person and how much we save and stuff. But it was fairly apparent, very obvious to us that it was so much easier to build and maintain. But I think the other thing is headaches, expected headaches, I guess I should say, are my biggest challenge right now. So anything that makes my life easier and I don't have to worry about is worth a lot of money to me. So we have a lot of fires at Dolby, other things, and so this is one job I can set up that I don't have to worry about breaking, failing, monitoring, Like I said, we've used it for 5 or 6 years. The replication just works. So, it was a pretty easy decision for us to, just in the last month or two, add this new use case and replicating this stuff for the email reflection. And it's very easy and paid for itself.
Great. One other question, just before I hand it over to Alan on the to dive into some of what this looks like from a demonstration perspective. Can either of you talk to your overall kind of cloud strategy? I mean, how do you determine what you're going to move to the cloud and when, and where does integration fit into that?
If I can first, we have, as I mentioned, the company has grown really rapidly within its first 9.5, almost 10 years of existence. So we rely on partners from the beginning to a lot of our applications, to provide a lot of our application hosting and hosting. So it wasn't a big cultural shift to go from a on-premise solution to a cloud-based solution for either the data integration or Salesforce.com itself. And it was rather an easy sell internally to say, okay, you know what, we'll do this on the cloud. Sales is already out there. Let's have integration also managed in the same paradigm, and we proceed from there. We'll see what we keep on premise and what we keep on the cloud for the rest.
Similar with you over at Dolby, or is there a broader cloud initiative underway to move more in that direction, John? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's really I have a little bit of a bias towards cloud since we've had a lot of success with it. But in the end, I don't really care whether it's on-premise or in the cloud. I mean, even on-premise doesn't really mean on-premise anymore, where we have hosted data centers that are sort of cloud-based infrastructure, where it's an on-premise app that, in our data center, it's sort of hosted by someone else. So the line is getting so blurry for me. I'm really more looking at, what to do, how much it costs, what's the maintenance for it. In a lot of cases, cloud-based applications, they seem to be easier to use. When there are upgrades, usually the cloud-based applications sort of take care of that for you. Maybe there's a maintenance window, but the cloud-based apps seem to sort of handle those upgrades more seamlessly than the big on-premise applications. So I think it just comes down to, the proposition. Like I said, I in general have a cloud bias because the value proposition is better. But for this replication job was available, with a click of a button, using Power Center or something like that, I don't think I would really say, oh no, it must be cloud. But because it's just so easy to use, probably there wasn't really much choice there.
Okay. Well, let's switch gears and hand it over to you, Alan. You've been kind of listening as we've gone along. There has been a couple of questions related to not just the replication use case, but also migration and synchronization. Let's over to you, and you can kind of take us through what this all looks like, and we can field some questions as we go along.
To do that, and let me confirmation, Darren, that my desktop is projecting.
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to take you through a demo of the Informatica Cloud Data Replication Service, and you'll see here in a moment, it's a true cloud application. So we adhere to all of those concepts that Kurt mentioned. The ease of use. I think you'll see that ease of use is really a dominant theme for Informatica Cloud, as well as the whole concept of adhering to the maintenance window and the fact that upgrades are automatic. There's no work, no effort on your part. So all that's an inherent part of Informatica Cloud. So where we'll start here is in the browser. Again, of course, being a true multi-tenant app, access is through the browser. The only thing you haven't seen me do here is log into the application itself. So, I navigated to our login page. I provided credentials and access to the Informatica Cloud Services platform. And on that form, you'll see here under the Data Services tab that, in fact, there are a collection of applications here. The reason for this is there's a variety of use cases and requirements that these applications are designed to tackle. Now, focus today is going to be data replication, so I'll go over to that tab here and get access to that application. And the easy way to really demo this is to show you what it takes to build one of these jobs from scratch. And I think you'll find very quickly that John and Kurt were not off at all when they're mentioning setting up these jobs in literally minutes. So up in here, under the data replication application, I'm going to click on New, and the first notice is, again, ease of use is dominant here. So everything wizard-driven, drag and drop, point and click, drop-down lists. You have to be able to navigate through this wizard in a matter of just a few minutes. Here, one, you only have a couple of choices that you need to make. So we give this job a name. I'll just arbitrarily call this Replication Webinar. And the second choice here is to choose what we call a connection, which will point our service to your Salesforce instance. So if I look at what that connection is all about, you'll see that basically you're providing to us a set of credentials, a Salesforce username and password that allow us to access your Salesforce org and, of course, replicate that data locally. From that down, it's all optional choices that you can make. Do you want to replicate everything within your Salesforce org? So all Sales Cloud objects, all Service Cloud objects, and custom objects that you may have installed by extending the Sales or Service Cloud or installing a Force.com application, or do you want to pick and choose which objects are going to be replicated? And if I use selected, then I get a list of objects, and I can pick and choose exactly what will be replicated in this particular job. And scroll down, you'll notice all the common objects here. Of course, all the standard objects like accounts and contacts and leads from the Sales Cloud, and cases and case comments and things like that from the Service Cloud. So you pick and choose, again, custom objects that may be a part of your Salesforce org, and you can use a part of your replication job here. Then you can pick and choose here, and keep in mind that there's a lot of powerful things happening behind the scenes of this interface. So you get the representation of simple radio buttons and checkboxes, but behind the scenes, the choices you make could very well have a significant impact on exactly how we interface with Salesforce, what API calls we make, how we act with the local database, and how we push data to it. So those are things that are a part of this application, a part of this UI, but your experience is simply choosing radio buttons and checkboxes here. For example, do you want to include archived and deleted records that are back in Salesforce? And if you click that box, you're basically turning on a couple of API calls that make that happen when we go back and extract that data from Salesforce. If the choices here are, again, pick a connection in this case, in this step, where you want the local replicated copy. And again, in this case, I'm pointing it toward an Oracle instance, but it could be SQL Server or MySQL. And if we look at the attributes of this connection, from a database perspective, it's typical information. What's the username, the password, where is this database running? In the case of Oracle, what's the service name or SID of the database? So it's all very typical connection information. Now, the target fix box here is an important point because it really illustrates one of the crown jewels of the Informatica replication application. And that gives the opportunity to add prefix to any of these objects that you're going to replicate. And the reason that's important is because this service will actually manage those target objects. So it will create the objects if they don't already exist. It will alter and manage and maintain those objects going forward as they change over time. So you're replicating not only data, but also the schema. And I think it really ties back to some of the comments that John and Kurt made about not only ease of use, but the savings, the ROI that this service provides, because that really is a significant differentiation from almost anything else we've seen out in the market. The ability to replicate that schema as well as the data. Keep in mind that, at least in my experience, most Salesforce customers, one of the big benefits of Salesforce is the flexibility that it provides. The flip side of that coin, however, is that it's very common for changes to roll into production in Salesforce on a weekly, daily, or even hourly basis. And when that happens, how do you keep your replication and integration jobs up to par when there's changes they were unaware of as early as 5 minutes ago? And so that's where this service really comes in handy. Now, it's going to be creating these objects to begin with. You have the opportunity to come in and add a prefix so that there is no conflict with any existing objects if you want to use an existing database. So make some choices here that, again, will change our behavior. But do you want to, as this runs on a schedule, do you want to simply identify incremental changes in Salesforce and move changes over, or do you want to simply do a completely full refresh every time this service runs? And then from a target perspective, depending on what your reasons are for replicating Salesforce, you may want to remove or retain any columns and rows that were deleted back in Salesforce. If this is getting pushed to a business intelligence environment, perhaps you retain those columns and rows for historical purposes and so that your historical reporting remains accurate. I would be required to go. I could literally click on Save here after step 2, and this is a valid replication job that would run, and it would run on whatever frequency you want it to. Now, with that said, there are some optional steps in the wizard here that you can choose to go through. For example, step 3, you can choose to exclude particular fields within an object. For example, you can see the UI is intelligent. It knows I only picked 2 objects for replication, so it lists these 2 objects. And any one of these objects, for example, account, I come in step 3 here, and to exclude particular fields from my replication list. So if I'm doing business intelligence reporting, chances are the free-form field for description is of no meaning to me. It's just inconsequential for reporting purposes. And so I'm going to choose to exclude that because it's a really large field and it doesn't add any value. So I'm going to try to speed up my replication by eliminating that field. So that's an example of step 3. Or somewhat similar in that you can restrict which records are now replicated. So you may have a Salesforce implementation that is spread around the world, but perhaps for replication purposes, you care about North American or U.S. data or something along those lines, and so you can arbitrarily choose to say, I only want to replicate the subset of data where the billing country field is equal to the U.S., or perhaps only certain record types of data that you care about. Lastly, you can decide when this replication is supposed to run. So will it run only when you invoke this job through the Cloud UI, or do you run it on some schedule? And if you do, is a schedule you've created before? Perhaps you go out and create a brand new schedule right on the fly. I could certainly come in and do that. You decide when the schedule starts, what day, what time, and then what sort of schedule is it? Is it monthly? Is it weekly, daily, all the way down to every n number of hours or minutes? So every 5 minutes, every 2 hours, once a day, once a week. So I could set a schedule up here. Let's call it every day, and we'll do every day instead of just the weekdays. And we'll use that schedule for this job. We click Save, and we're done. That entire process of setting up a replication job within this application from end to end. And I think, at least hopefully, I believe you're getting a feel for why both John and Kurt were mentioning, that they literally had their teams set this up in a matter of just a few minutes.
Hey, quick question on the security side. Mm-hmm. So what's the standard advisable security configuration to set up access from Informatica to a database? Is there anything people should know about there?
So there's a couple of topics around that question that we'd probably need to touch on. Number one, there's a part of the Informatica architecture, something we call the secure agent, which is a part of our overall architecture. Now, the reason this agent is, like the other cloud apps like Salesforce, for example, who can happily run in somewhat of a silo fashion, if you will, where they don't have to interact with on-premise environments like a local database. That is exactly what Informatica does. And so what's been proven across our 2,000 cloud customers over the last 4 to 5 or 6 years, is that the architect having this local secure agent that can establish a connection to the local database is the right way to go. It's the right architecture. It's been proven vetted by folks like Actelion and a lot of other folks in very sensitive industries, pharmaceutical, healthcare, financial services, that are ironically markets that Informatica Cloud is very prevalent in. So it's this local agent that establishes that connection to the local database. There are no security risks. It is a local connection from the database perspective, and you really eliminate that whole concept of punching a hole in the firewall or anything along those lines.
Okay, Kurt or John, anything to add there in terms of hoops you might have had to go through, or to add balance points on security?
John, I just want to emphasize that point that the secure agent is the only access point in and out of Actelion's local network environment. So as far as exposure, no different than the exposure you have with all of hosted applications that the data is already out of your perimeter. Everything that is inside is still as protected and as secure as it always has been. Whether that's very rough and good or not, that depends on your network architecture and IT infrastructure, and it doesn't get affected, in other words, by introducing the secure agent.
Okay, great.
So Darren, one last point I was going to make here, just to really drive home the point of ease of use and rapid deployment here. We'll go through the one more time, and I'm going to do it in real time this time instead of taking time to explain at each step. And as quick as this, if someone were timing it, it'd probably be under a minute. I could set up a job that would replicate data to a local environment, get all objects, do every 5 minutes, and I'm done doing that in a matter of somewhere between 30 seconds and a minute. And the real thing to keep in mind here is this job just set up in about a minute. It will locate all of the objects in Salesforce, and then as it runs in the future, the first thing it does is it does that analysis of the schema to understand every change that's been made in Salesforce and apply those same changes to the local copy. So if new objects are added from one to the next, those objects all of a sudden show up in your replicated copy. If an existing object has been changed, that object will be changed accordingly.
Okay. Some questions about getting data in, synchronizing with, and then maybe even tying some of these tasks together in some kind of flow. Can you talk about how that would work? And then also wanted to, if you can, touch upon some of the interoperability, because there's a lot of Power Center folks on the line.
Sure. So let me start with the former. It's very typical to end up when you're using the Informatica Cloud Services platform and all the applications we have available under the Services tab. It is very common to end up with multiple jobs here, what we refer to as tasks. Some of those tasks might be replication tasks, some synchronization tasks, or even Power Center tasks. There is an application here that allows existing Power Center users or Enterprise Edition Cloud users to create sophisticated jobs within the Power Center environment and move those jobs to the cloud and have them run on the cloud architecture. And that's all done through the Power Center application here. When you end up with multiple tasks and you want some basic workflow logic applied where they need to run in a particular order, you want to group them up, you can do that through the Cloud UI here in the form of what we call a task flow. So I'm in here, for example, and I can create a brand new task flow, and we will call this Webinar Task Flow. And instead of scheduling at the individual task level, you can now schedule up at a level at the task flow level, and you get those same schedules, including that webinar schedule that I created a moment ago, and just come in here in the UI and start to add the particular members of this task flow. So in my first member, one of replication application tasks. So maybe it's that first one I created here called Replication Webinar. I can add that task to my task flow, can add a second one, and maybe this is a different type of task. It's a synchronization task, and I can do that, and I'll just arbitrarily pick any one of these, and I can add that to my task flow. I see what sequence they're in. I can use to have them do particular things, apply particular action to them. So, you know, if the first one fails, in this case the replication webinar task, then don't bother to run the second job because there's some dependency. You know, this is very prevalent in the replication environment, but it's probably even more prevalent in the synchronization application where you're trying to integrate and synchronize between Salesforce and their existing application to support a business process. You know, for instance, opportunity to order, where when an opportunity closes in Salesforce, you need to get orders over in Oracle eBiz Suite or something like that. And if your first task that syncs customer data from one application to another fails, then you don't want to run the opportunity to order task because your level required data that relates to the customer didn't make it, and therefore you want to fix that before you run the opportunity to order. But that's what flows are all about here.
And there was a question, you kind of skipped over the data filter tab as you were creating a task quickly. Any specific kinds of filters you see that are common for replication or other use cases?
Yeah, so there, in the replication scenario, it is very common to have, let me jump at that job. It's very common to have filters for the purposes of restricting what data you want to replicate. You know, perhaps your business intelligence environment you're only doing reporting on a particular subset of data, and therefore there's no need to replicate your entire Salesforce data set. So, and this is a real basic example of that down here, where country is equal to the U.S., or perhaps you only want particular record types coming out of Salesforce. In the synchronization world, over in the other application here called data synchronization, it's very common because this application is used to integrate between two existing applications. Again, let's say eBiz Suite and Salesforce as our choices. It's very common to filter in that step 4 to apply an incremental data modeling, incremental processing model. So you only go back to the source application, whichever direction you're going, eBiz to Salesforce or Salesforce to eBiz, and do something, for example, in that filter step like looking at the last modified date of the records and only pulling records that have changed since the last run of that particular task. And some variables that allow that to happen. We'll maintain the value of those variables, such as last runtime, and we will make sure we're incrementing the value of that last runtime variable. So you only need to put a filter in place. In essence, you're taking advantage of the incremental processing model.
So let me just bring back Kurt and John. Are there any other aspects of the replication use case that didn't cover, or other things you'd want to add that you might also be doing in terms of additional features with Informatica Cloud?
I'm sure I will have a lot more to add to this discussion in about half a year's time. And start deploying the rest of the enterprise integration program on Informatica Cloud. At this point, I think what we have been doing is, and once again, I want to emphasize that we had this vision in our mind of how this would work, and it has worked at least that well. So we're very happy.
Great.
This is Alan. One comment I would like to throw out is, although it sounds like Kurt and John in their organizations, perhaps they are not dealing with large volumes of data, I do think it's important to point out that we have many customers that are using the replication application for some very sizable data sets in the tens of millions of records. In fact, you might even have a more recent or current count than you, but I do know there's many customers that are dealing with replicating 50, 60, 70 million records on a daily basis.
Yeah, and people can actually go and visit just type in trust.informaticacloud.com/status, and you can see the daily aggregate of volumes being run through the service. I think you were going to add something, Kurt, on what you're doing over at Dolby.
You can say that no. I mean, everything that you guys covered is what we're doing, and maybe even stuff we haven't yet leveraged. But yeah, more stuff is the basic replication, choosing which objects, which fields to exclude, and basic filters. So.
Okay, great. So, Alan, we're going to switch back over just to wrap. Anything else you wanted to mention before we do that?
I don't believe so. I'll certainly be happy to stay up for any questions, but I think that covers what I wanted to show today.
Okay. One question that came in that's I think relevant for all of you as we switch back to just kind of putting in slide mode is around comparison in terms of job execution time with respect to Power Center. So this speaks to the secure agent and what that is, how it compares to Power Center. I wonder if, Alan, you could take a crack at that, and if you guys have seen anything there as well.
Yeah, so the secure agent I mentioned, I guess two things. Number one, the experience of getting that agent downloaded and into your environment is extremely easy. If I had to draw an analogy, I would draw that analogy to the WebEx today. When you first get your Informatica Cloud org provisioned, there's a place in the Cloud org you can navigate to and click on a button that says Download Secure Agent, and that's, in essence, the involved. It downloads, it self-installs, it registers itself back with your Informatica Cloud org, and indicates that, in essence, it is up, running, and ready to participate. The experience of getting that agent downloaded is extremely easy. One habit, as far as performance, throughput, that sort of thing, the thing to keep in mind about the secure agent for the center folks that are on the phone today, in a specialized, customized instance of a Power Center engine, if you will. So it's all of those performance attributes that you're used to when you're using Informatica's on-premise solution called Power Center. You get the streaming throughput, you get the high volume throughput from source to target that you're used to. And that was a choice made very early on. We realized that we had the best engine market at our fingertips in Informatica, so we certainly didn't want to reinvent the wheel when it came to that part of this architecture.
Okay, great. Let's just bring it back to the presentation. I think I'm sharing my screen again. I just want to wrap up and thank everyone for taking us through their use cases. There's one thing that I did want to also mention. If you look at some of the traditional challenges of analytics, around a single application, whether it's a SaaS app or not, one of them is, just going back on this, is the challenge of implementing complex business rules or calculations. And I wanted to highlight a new capability that we've introduced with Informatica Cloud. It was actually just introduced with our summer release, which is the concept of templates. And we introduced a new Informatica Cloud or Informatica Marketplace Mall for templates. The most popular templates we have out there is called Aggregator Template. So I'll share. You see the URL there. I can type it into the screen at the bottom as well. But it's a really interesting one if you want to take things to the next level on the analytics side with Informatica. Alan, anything you'd want to add on templates and the power of what that can deliver for people on the call?
The point that I would add is Informatica is always about ease of use, and so it is the best way to think of this is templates is a method of maintaining our incredibly high ease of use, but at the same time allowing folks to implement and deploy some fairly complex logic. And it typically is done in cases where there are repeatable patterns, where there's a common business process that underlies it. So, for example, you'll see a template that does opportunity to order, and maybe a part of that opportunity to order process takes a bundled product on the Salesforce side and bundles it and generates all the unique different products on the target side, on the ERP side. So the time that order hits, it's in appropriate form for that application to accept. And that means some fairly sophisticated processing, but it's all done through the template, and the template is all implemented through a very easy to use Visio plugin. So you're basically using Visio to generate this plugin, and you use the plugin within the Cloud UI like I've been doing all day today.
The URL on the you can just type in informaticamarketplace.com for more information on Connector Marketplace and our templates. So with that, I want to thank again everyone for attending. We are going to be present in a very big way at Dreamforce. So if you are going to Dreamforce, we'd love to see you there. We're actually hosting an exclusive customer event on the Monday, so you can get in touch with us if you'd like to have more information about that. Or you can type in informaticacloud.com/Dreamforce. I'd like to encourage you, if you're new to this whole concept, you've never worked with Informatica Cloud, do take advantage of our 30-day trial. You can get started and really try things out, what Alan was taking you through on your own. They actually are running some particular promotions for our replication service between now and Dreamforce. So if you'd like to dive into this, now is a great time to do so. A couple of additional resources. Video site, which has some tutorials and resources to help you get started with Informatica Cloud. With very active community. If you get going and have some technical questions, you can take advantage of these resources as well. Try to be as self-service as possible and really put things out there for you to experience on your own. And then we'd love to talk to you about what a broader implementation or use of Informatica Cloud might look like. With that, I'd like to thank everyone for asking quite a few questions. We tried to get to most of them as we went through today's presentation. A special thank you to you, Kurt and John, for taking the time to, in your very busy schedules, to take us through the use case of Informatica Cloud at your companies.
Nope.
All right, thank you, everyone. That concludes today's webinar. We look forward to working with you. And as always, you can learn more at informaticacloud.com.